to have you here with us at Somaliland National Television. I'm Mohammed Aden here to present to you the English Bulletin. Let's take a look at the main stories making headlines. House of Elders debate improvements made on security as part of the 57th agenda. Hargeisa municipality completes sanitary campaign in Ahmed Dagh district. France trained gunmen suspected to have ties to radical Islamist movement. Members of the House of Elders debated improvements made regarding security as part of the 57th agenda, chaired by the Deputy Speaker, Saeed Jama Ali. Members of the House of Elders discussed efforts that were exerted in maintaining security across the country. Parliamentarians stated that more have been achieved in maintaining security across the regions of Somaliland due to the government's efforts in cooperation with residents. Recently, members of the House of Elders have been discussing issues regarding security, where several parliamentarians suggested that citizens should cooperate with security agencies as it is in the interest of all citizens. Parliamentarians raising issues that can contribute more to the threats against security stated that unemployment and consumption of drugs can be risks in security and need to be tackled seriously. Hargeisa municipality, in cooperation with residents of Ahmed Dagh district, has executed efforts at increasing the appearance of Ahmed Dagh district by paving blocked roads and cleaning the garbage sites. Head of administration for Hargeisa municipality stated that they have achieved a lot in cooperation with residents and commended residents for their part in completing this task, as the magnificent appearance of the district is instrumental in the efforts aimed at the beautification of the capital city. These efforts were undertaken by the municipality of the capital from the time local councillors had been elected. Several roads have been paved during this undertaking, and the residents of Ahmed Dagh district have welcomed these renewed efforts that can facilitate transport served in and outside the district. Ahmed Dagh district officials have also pledged more hard work and commitment in enhancing the appearance of the district, to follow suit other districts across the capital city whose residents had previously achieved their beautification efforts. SLN TV meets former member of the UK Parliament and Minister of Fisheries during Thatcher's administration regarding fishing project in Somaliland and recognition.
Somaliland National Television held an exclusive interview with a former Member of Parliament in the UK, the Right Honourable Tony Baldry, MP for 32 years for the Banbury district. Alongside the Right Honourable Tony Baldry was Ian Fenwick, a business partner, alongside fellow business partner Mohammed Abdurrahman. This interview itself took place in Temple in London, the capital city of the United Kingdom. The Right Honourable Tony Baldry, who's also a barrister as well, discussed his views about Somaliland and their search for recognition.
It is intended to help Somaliland get much better benefit for its fisheries resources. I mean, Somaliland has a large coastline, nearly 800 kilometres, 70,000 square kilometres of sea fisheries within its EEZ. At the moment, the only people who have been benefiting from this have been Yemenis, Iranians and various other ragtag and bobtail, but very little benefit has been coming to the people of Somaliland, and we want to change that.
And you were previously a Minister of Fisheries here in the UK. How has that experience allowed you to take this project forward?
Well, I think having been a UK Fisheries Minister, I mean, I have some understanding of concepts such as total annual catches, total allowable catches, of quotas for fish stocks, the need to ensure that the actual catch is sustainable, so that we can actually have managed fisheries. And I've done that as a fisheries minister, and those are sorts of disciplines that we'd want to apply to the Somaliland's fisheries. But it's not going to be absolutely perfect from day one, because everyone recognises we haven't got 100% data, so we're going to have to err on the side of caution, but it is going to be significantly improved if we can get responsible fishing companies to what has been happening in the recent past, where people have just been effectively stealing Somaliland's fish.
And I understand you're an advocate for Somaliland in general. How has your relationship developed with that particular area in the world?
Well, I mean, I think Somaliland is actually a model country in many ways for Africa. It's got defined borders. It has a democratic government. It has had regular changes of president. It's got a two-chamber system for the parliament. If you look around Africa, there are many, many other countries which have nothing like the democratic credibilities of Somaliland. And having been going to Hargeisa now for getting on for 15 years on a regular basis, one can see the improvements that are taking place in Hargeisa, that there's more building, more wealth, more enterprise, more initiative going on in the country, improvements to the airports, hotels, new businesses. I mean, this is a country which is motoring, and it would be so much better if the international community recognised Somaliland as a de jure state. Now, next year, Somaliland will be celebrating effectively 25 years of independence, and one would hope the Africa Union and others would realise that actually Somaliland has in many ways much better claims to independence than countries like Eritrea or South Sudan.
How much would you say it's developed since your most recent?
Yes, I mean, I think there's a lot more self-confidence in Somaliland now. I think the government, the actual running of the government is much more competent. So there is a presidential complex now, sort of ministers and functioning in a way which 10, 15 years ago it was just the president's office and everything being done out of that. And, one now feels that ministers have some grip, some real grip over their own departments. So I think there's much greater self-confidence in Hargeisa and much greater self-confidence in Somaliland as a whole. One can see improvements, such as improvements in the roads, the improvement in the road condition between Hargeisa and Berbera. But there's still an enormous amount of potential. I mean, Berbera could be a port to rival Djibouti. It is the only port, it's an alternative port for Ethiopia to Djibouti. So there's a lot more potential there in Somaliland, in agriculture and fisheries, in other areas still to be developed.
You've just come back from a recent trip to Somaliland. Could you give us an idea into what you experienced and what you saw while you were there?
Okay, my experience was actually a very pleasant experience. It was the second trip this year. Had previously been there in April for just 2 days, and the just arriving at the airport is just really not what one would expect when you arrive there, when you hear so much about the problems in Somalia and Somaliland. The situation there was that the freedom of being able to walk around and to conduct business and the welcome, it was quite overwhelming. It really is an exceptional welcome that you receive.
You discussed fishing opportunities, among other stuff. What are the biggest industries that you can see developing as a businessman in the region as a whole?
Right. The fishing opportunity, the fishing contract that we've succeeded in gaining with the government out there, I think possibly is one of the biggest industries at the moment. Fish is the largest food commodity in the world. I can't even think of what the figures are of what it's worth. The coastal waters of Somaliland it's an overstocked pond from the research that we've carried out. There's an awful lot of reports on the total allowable catch, which is referred to as a TAC. But these reports are also outdated, so we've had to go back as far as the 70s, 80s and 90s to gather reports and to calculate and advise the government on what is a sustainable annual catch for the waters out there. The reality of it is that our researchers, which was common sense really, that during the troubled times, which has been many years, is that unlike with farming or manufacturing, If there are problems, then it deteriorates. But with the fishing industry, those fish just get bigger and they just breed. So, in fact, there's more fish in those waters, one suspects, than there was in the 90s, because it hasn't really been fished effectively, and there is a huge market for the fish market, both for Somaliland and export. One of the biggest industries right on the doorstep is 80 million people in Ethiopia that don't have a coastline. That road from Berbera to Ethiopia, once that's developed, I think that'll be a main highway, fish lorries backwards and forwards. And also the research that we found that it's such a small percentage of fish that goes from Berbera, which is a 2-hour drive, into Hargeisa. And our intention is to, once that we put our contract is implemented and the fish starts coming in, we don't just want fishing boats and international vessels to catch the fish and take it off. Use the port of Berbera, develop the port. It's for the good of the community, the good of the country actually as a whole. But then perhaps for us to provide 2 refrigerated fish trucks to take fish into Hargeisa every day, because there is a desire for it. But the infrastructure is not there to deal with it. So the fish is the most immediate opportunity. One of the other areas that we discovered, and that was through previous trips that Sir Tony Baldry had out to Hargeisa and Berbera, was the redundant cement factory. It's been redundant for 25 years now, and there is a huge desire for cement out there and in other African countries, let alone just across in the Arab states. And it's there, in Berbera, just outside Berbera, they have the raw materials, the gypsum and the lime. So one of the projects that we didn't think we was going out there to deal with, but one of the projects the ministers and indeed His Excellency has asked us to look into, which we've already started, is to redevelop the cement works. And at this early stage, just 2 weeks into it, the reality of it is that once we've formed that partnership with the government out there, it will probably be completely rebuilt. It was old technology 25 years ago, so it's probably better to rebuild it. We have several interested parties already that want to go in there and do that. And again, it's for the good of the local people, employment. And also, just at these early stages, we have realised, and someone's brought to our attention, that the power generated from the cement factory could probably power Berbera. This is quite knowing the price of electricity out there is quite expensive. So everyone we spoke to said, electricity is our problem. I just think that would be a huge advantage to the people.
Mohammed Abdurrahman provided his insight into how he got these 2 men together and how they together aim to bring beneficial developmental programs to develop the coastline of Somaliland, particularly in the area of fisheries.
Fingerprint evidence has shown the heavily armed man suspected of launching an attack on a French train in Moroccan national known to the European authorities due to his links to the radical Islam, according to a source familiar with the case. French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve said the gunman appeared to be a 26-year-old Moroccan who had been identified by the Spanish authorities to French intelligence services in February 2014 because of his connection to the radical Islamist movement. Cazeneuve did not identify the man, but French media have named him as Ayoub El-Kazani. French anti-terrorism investigators have until Tuesday night to question the suspect. According to a Spanish counter-terrorism source, the Spanish authorities had a suspect that they identified as Kazani under surveillance before he left Spain for France in 2014. After that, he travelled to Syria before returning to France. 7 people have been killed after a plane performing in an air show crashed into a busy road in the south of England. Local police said on Saturday evening that it was possible more bodies might be found, with the search of the wreckage set to continue through the night and into Sunday. The pilot is in critical condition. The 1950s aircraft was performing a loop at Royal Air Forces Association Rafah Shore Air Show near Breton when it came down in flames. Journalist Laura Raymond, who witnessed the crash, explained to media what happened. We were watching the Hawker Hunter start its display. It did a big loop. We were watching from the top of a double-decker bus from probably a half-mile away. Many of us thought that it was going rather low to the ground. And to the next minute there was a huge ball of fire and black smoke. And we knew that it hadn't come down within the airfield perimeter and that it must have come down on the A27 road. Sussex police said on Saturday evening that it was possible more bodies might be found, with a search of the wreckage set to continue through the night and into Sunday. The air show will be closed on Sunday. And that's it for this edition of English News. Thank you for catching us. Join us at the same time tomorrow. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.